My name is Chamonix Fernandes.
And I'm Leon Fernandes.
So, we're going to be interviewing Sandy Climan, the producer of The Aviator, a movie that features the life of Howard Hughes, who was an aviator. Coincidence? I don't think so. But now, into the interview.
Good morning from Singapore. I'm Leon.
And I'm Chamonix. And we're really excited to learn more about movies from you today.
I'm so happy to be here with you. It is evening here in Los Angeles. We have the Democratic National Convention going on tonight, and couldn't think of a more wonderful way to spend the evening than we'll talk about movies, but I want to talk about you guys, and I want to talk about, your lives as well. So fire away.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself and entertainment media ventures?
Well, I grew up in the Bronx, which is what I would consider kind of a working class borough of the city of New York. Neither of my parents went to college, but the New York public school system was good, and it allowed me, I did a lot of science, and I was able to graduate the Bronx High School of Science, and then I went to Harvard and I studied chemistry, and I studied public health, and I studied business. I got an MBA and a Master of Science in Health Policy and Management. But what I realized at the end of my education was that I learned pretty much everything I knew about the world. Now, you guys are too young. Think about a world with no cell phones, where flying was an absolute luxury. Only wealthy people could fly. And there were no faxes. There were landline telephones, and pretty much the only way to learn about the world was through books, television, and movies. And I pretty much traveled the world, and I learned the stories of the world, and I went to places that I didn't know that I would ever see in my life. But how did I do that? I did that through the imagination of storytelling. And I said, if someone will pay, at the end of business school, I said, if someone will pay me to watch movies and television, that might not be a bad thing to do. And I got on a plane. I was one of 3 people in my graduating class that did not have a job. And I moved to California, having never been west of really the East Coast. And I started as a secretary in Hollywood. Took me a couple of months. Nobody would hire me either. And finally, I got somebody to hire me as their second secretary, not their first secretary, their second secretary. And it's a good thing I knew how to type. By the way, just to finish that up, after I did that, I worked at several small film companies, and I had an affection for the international business. I worked at MGM. I helped run Creative Artists Agency, the largest talent agency in the world. I helped run Universal, and Entertainment Media Ventures was sort of an invention of mine 20 years ago, so that I could do venture capital and work with the tech world, which I knew would one day intersect with the movie world, and where I could actually work with entrepreneurs, because I love 2 kinds of people most to work with: talent, creative talent, actors, writers, directors, producers, and entrepreneurs who build businesses. And much like your father, there are very similar skill sets in being an entrepreneur to being really a motion picture talent. So go for it. You were asking about which part of my childhood. My childhood's a mess. What do you want to know?
Do you have any siblings?
Well, look, I grew up, I had 2 brothers, and both older. And I probably actually did pretty well, because I watched all the things they did wrong, and I tried not to do them. And, they grew up in turbulent times, the civil rights movement, hippiness, all kinds of, things that went on in those days that were, by today's standards, pretty standard. In those days, they were changing the way we lived. And, I tried to be the good kid. I mean, I was the one who, when my father wanted to water the lawn, I would turn on the hose.
Were you naughty as a child? Did you like playing pranks?
I was just saying, I was the good kid. So I didn't play pranks on anybody. I didn't do anything wrong. Um, Pranks were played on me, though, and it was very annoying. And by the way, when people would play pranks on you, you sort of say, I shouldn't do that to somebody else. Now, once in a while, there's good humor there, and that's okay. But for the most part, I remember I was in California as an adult, and one of my weirdly naughty friends who actually have ended up running a studio, we were watching the Super Bowl, and I think he was making prank calls to people who were there. And I didn't, and I watched him do this for a few minutes, and then I made him stop because it just was the wrong thing to do. But that said, I do appreciate a good prank. Do you guys play pranks?
At times, yes, but when you said that, if someone played a prank on you, you kind of feel like you didn't want to play pranks on other people. Honestly, if I were you, I would want to prank them back.
Well, that's kind of how wars start. Is that you go, let's escalate this. And then, the next thing you know, you're throwing a water balloon. After the water balloon, you're, toilet papering the house. After you toilet paper the house, you're putting shaving cream on the car. After you're putting shaving cream on the car, you're shaving the dog. You don't want to do that.
We've got a lot more ideas from you than we have from a lot of YouTube videos. Don't remember any of those ideas. I need them.
Yes.
Did you have any pets?
I grew up with dogs, and I've always loved animals, and I particularly love dogs.
Yes.
I actually think, now my dog when I was growing up was pretty mean. He was a pretty mean dog, except to me. I loved my dog. And his name was Tiger. And when I was very little, he would sleep on the top step, and I would sleep on his neck, and he would never move. And if he actually moved, he might have thrown me down the stairs, and we might not be on a call right now. And I loved him terribly much, but he also bit a lot of people, which was not the best thing he could do. But I've always had dogs, and after him, the next dog was just a sweetie. He used to sit in my mother's lap and pet her hair with his paw. When I was married, I think we had 5 dogs at the most, and that was a pack. And the good news is, for the most part, they got along. But actually, what was very sad is the last of those dogs died last week. And it was the end of an era of these dogs, but they all led very good, very long, very happy lives. And for the most part, the dogs that we got were rescues. And my sons, both for their bar mitzvahs, which is when they turned 13 in the Jewish religion, all of their money, all of the money that they got as gifts went to animal rescue. And we support something called the Amanda Foundation in Beverly Hills, which saves dogs and saves cats.
Are you planning on getting another dog?
If I used to actually be on a plane 2 weeks out of the month. So I always felt it was unfair to get a dog and be gone that much. If I could borrow a dog, I used to borrow my son's dog, and that was the dog that just passed away. But I actually would. If I were home more and I worked less, I absolutely would have a dog. Now, there are a lot of people who don't think dogs should sleep on the bed with you. I spent most of my lives with dogs sleeping on the bed with me. I used to sleep with one Jack Russell Terrier on my head when the cat wasn't on my head. And then we would have a Norwegian elk hound between myself and my wife, which is not really conducive to a happy marriage. And then we might have had an Akita at the foot of the bed, which is a Japanese bear hunting dog. Very sweet, very smart.
That is a whole lot of dogs. But
it's a whole lot of dogs.
Like you, my brother and I are humongous animal lovers. And we're really hoping to get a dog. Do you have any top tips on how to convince parents to get their kids pets?
Well, there are a lot of different ways. We can go back to the prank thing. And if you can prank your parents and just sort of make them angry enough and they don't either sort of beat you or send you away, and tell them you'll stop pranking them if they get you a dog, that's a plus. I giving you a serious answer to how you convince your parents to give you a dog. Your parents love you very much. When you get a dog, it is not a casual thing. It is a serious, serious commitment because you love them, they become a part of your family. And also, I've often said, most people don't deserve the dogs they get because the dogs give you unconditional love. And it's like having a brother or a sister. I mean, it's, you know, they are living beings with emotions, and they capture your emotions. And you really have to tell your parents, you talk it through as to what life is going to look like with the dog. Who's going to walk the dog? Who's going to feed the dog? Who's going to bathe the dog? How are we going to do this? And again, at your age, I used to walk the dog every day. And it's one of those things where if you get a dog, it is important for the dog because the dog deserves the dog will love you, and you actually have to love the dog as much as the dog loves you. And between everyone in the family, there has to be a plan as to what it's like to add a family member.
That was very good advice. Yeah.
I want to hear how it works out after this call, when you sit down with your parents and have that discussion.
I think I'll try the pranking method first.
You know, that's not the answer you should be giving, but keep going.
What were some of your hobbies growing up?
Oh, you know, that's a good question. I don't remember that many hobbies. I love going to the movies, and you know, I used to, you know, I never thought I would work in the movies or in television, so I just loved it. I mean, I loved immersing myself in stories. I did, you know. I mean, you know, when I was growing up, TVs were black and white. I remember when we got our first color TV, they were small, they were tiny compared to the TVs that you watch today. They were cathode ray tubes. They're not like the flat screen, high definition TVs, you know, that you have or I have at home today. But I remember we had public television here when I was growing up in New York. It's all over the U.S. And I would watch Greek plays. I remember watching Antigone. I remember watching enormously Atoll Fugard plays from South Africa. And to me, my hobbies were the intellectual pursuit of stories around the world. And you know, other people, they played baseball. I was terrible at sports, still am terrible. I'm sure that somewhere I could play a sport, but I'm not sure what it would be. You know, so there was really no sports in my life. I was not a popular child. Let's put it this way. You guys are probably popular children. I was not a popular child. You look popular. I didn't look popular, and I wasn't popular. You know, I didn't go to parties, and nobody invited me to parties. And, you know, I was kind of the nerd. I mean, I was like, you know, the serious academic, you know, it's like you go, hey, did you prank? No, I didn't prank. I studied. And, you know, I would, you know, study all the time. And, you know, which is good. You know, trust me, both of you. So those are the hobbies. And, you know, today, you know, it's hard to, you know what my favorite hobby always was meeting new people. Because I have friends, you know, when I went into the business world, a lot of people in the entertainment business and where I worked, they collected art. And I appreciate art, but I collected people, hence your father. And, you know, and I found the most interesting people, and you learn so much when you just listen to them. The trick is as they say, you know, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you talk.
My mom is literally pointing at us and saying, yeah, you should do that.
Tell your mother to behave herself.
Behave yourself! Did you like to read books?
I did like to read books, and you know, the thing about reading books is you can go anywhere in the world and you can imagine it through words. And I'm always in awe, whether it's a book or a screenplay, as to the gift of writers to capture dialogue, character, story structure. And yes, you know, books are critical. And you know, they tell you now that you should read. I mean, look, you guys are a little young for this, but you will have children one day. And you should do what I'm sure your parents did for you, which is read to your child from almost the beginning. Because reading to your child is, it has this cognitive development of your brain. And there is nothing like reading. And I remember, look, you know, movies are great, but books are very different than movies. I remember reading Jack London's book, The Call of the Wild. And if you love animals, that's a book for you. You should read the book because it's the story of a wolf dog that has had a very rough life until he meets the man he's going to go through the rest of his life with. And it has a tragic ending because the guy is killed. But it is one of the best stories about man and an animal, a person with their dog. I remember reading a book that you may have read called The Incredible Journey. And there's a wonderful Disney movie made when I was young and made later. But the book is about two dogs and a cat that get separated and need to find their family. And they travel across the country together to find the people who are their family. And you know, these sorts of things break your heart and they inspire you at the same time.
Do you play any computer games? Do you have any favorite games when you were younger?
Now, here's the problem with computer games, okay? I have very bad eye-to-hand coordination. And by the time computer games were really, you know, I grew up, they were Pong and Defender, and they were, you know, Atari machines. But by the time we got to Super Mario Brother and Zelda and all that kind of stuff, and we had home consoles, I was too old to compete against the kids. Now, I did try. And my ex-wife, she did better than I did. But it was very frustrating because I actually have almost no skills for computer games. Now, there are games that I would play which were sort of like puzzle games or finding things out and those kinds of games. And you know, I tried that for a while, like Myst. And, you know, I didn't have the 60 hours to solve it. And, you know, when it comes to things like, you know, Sim City or, you know, the sort of farming games, I think my ex-wife did better than I did. But I did help run the games division of Universal, and we created Crash Bandicoot then, and which, as you know, is getting rebooted right now. And that was Sony PlayStation's first big hit, and we had a good time with that. It's created by a group called Naughty Dog, and there was a dog. So there was a naughty dog in the office at all times. He was a black lab, and he was a good dog. Hence the name of the group, Naughty Dog.
That sounds like a really adorable dog. Why did it name Naughty Dog? Shouldn't they name Good Dog?
Well, I think the dog had a different name, but the name of the company was Naughty Dog. And if you look them up, they're still making games and they're still knocking them out of the park.
My brother and I love to play Minecraft, and we tell our parents that it boosts our creativity. Would you agree with us?
I agree. You should tell your parents it boosts your creativity because then they'll let you continue to play it. I actually think that, firstly, you know, how much do your parents know about Minecraft?
Not too much. Our mum tried to play it and she ended up killing like loads of horses while she was trying to ride it. And
you know, I
deny it.
I have great empathy for your mother. But what I would say about Minecraft is the following. Firstly, I think video games actually do play a positive role in some ways, but it can't be all you do. So you should play X amount of games, spend X amount of time on the computer, and then you should be reading, you should be studying, you should be doing all kinds of things. And it is the balance of all of the above that I think is the right approach. None of this, this notion of, in Korea they call it karoshi, which is you play a video game and you drop dead because you play it all the time, you stop eating. And, there's a sense of just too much video game. So if you play just enough, that's good. Now, I understand that in Minecraft, they're already having concerts and other entertainment. So there's a community nature to Minecraft.
There is. So moving on to questions when you were slightly older. If you had to describe one or two experiences during your childhood that helped build the foundation for your future career, what would those be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I grew up in the Northeast Bronx, which was a very poor section of the Bronx. It wasn't the poorest section, but it was not a wealthy section. And really what we had on Boston Post Road back then where we had 2 movie theaters. And the fact that I could go to the movies all the time, and movies were inexpensive, was very, very helpful. And it got me hooked on movies. And I used to go see movies that nobody else wanted to see. I mean, I'd go see Fellini's 8 1/2 and things like that, which were hugely, fun and esoteric movies. Now, in my neighborhood, nowadays, you see a movie and they open up the same day everywhere. Back then, we were like a third tier. So we'd get the movies after they had played everywhere else, but we didn't know that. So that helped shape my career. I think, in a way, I think the ethics of my parents helped shape what I do. And I've talked about this with my sons. My father and mother never did any. They didn't do wrong things. So when confronted with something where they had a moral decision, they made the right decision. And I think that's important. And parents have to know that it's not what you tell your children, it's what they watch you do. And I remember once, and this is a story I haven't really told. So remember the vicious dog I grew up with?
Yes.
All right. Name was Tiger. So by the time Tiger was older, he was less vicious, probably because he was older. And my cousin Michael was over at the house, and these are small houses and row houses in the Northeast Bronx. My cousin Michael took Tiger's head between his hands while he was sitting on the couch, and he threw Tiger's head back and forth. And I remember I was probably your age, and I said, I wouldn't do that. I said, he's not going to like that. And what do you think? Tiger, of course, having his head thrown back and forth a couple of times, bit my cousin Michael. Now, and it wasn't, now I've seen him bite people when he wanted to be mean. This was like a bite like, get away from me and stop throwing my head around. It wasn't a bad bite. But yes, he bled, and yes, he got bit. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like some kind of like vicious vampire attack or werewolf attack that you guys probably have seen somewhere in a movie that your parents don't know you've seen. But so he gets bit, and we get sued by our cousins. And our cousins come to us, and we say, this is terrible. I mean, we feel badly he got bit, but he's not like, there's nothing really wrong with him. And they go, look, we're suing you. And my parents, they, said, no, we're not going to go along with that. And they said, look, the insurance company will give you a settlement. We'll split the settlement with you, which is illegal, by the way. And my parents said, we're not going to do that. That's wrong. And when I was your age, and I'm not 100% sure why I knew this went on, it left a lasting impression about the ethics and the values you take forward in terms of how you do business and personal business. You don't do wrong things.
Right, next. What were your favorite subjects in school?
Oh, I don't know. Favorite subjects in school? I liked history. History is probably a lot like storytelling. And, I think, the biggest issue I have in life is there's not enough time to know the true stories. The thing is, history is so marvelous, but you actually have to, at your age, I just want to assure you, you should do this. Don't take what people tell you at face value, do research. And we're doing that now in the United States in a very serious way. We're looking at the Civil War. And all of the stories we were told about the Civil War are too superficial. They're too high level. They don't tell the true story. And what I love about history is that if you have all the tools with the internet, if you use them right, is to look very deeply as to what motivated people, what really happened, as opposed to some other version of what happened, and what you can learn from those stories. So that's why I love history.
Didn't you like English if you liked storytelling?
Well, English and history are very similar. I mean, the wonderful thing about English is when you're reading English, a lot of times you're reading stories that are historic. But I did like English. And I do appreciate the use of the English language. And I still am, one of the things that I like most about screenplays is you are writing people's dialogue. And you can come up with words and sentences and phrases and speeches that are absolutely mesmerizing. And as you grow up, I hope you get to hear whether they are politicians, business leaders, philanthropists, social leaders, religious leaders, your parents. I hope you are always surrounded by the beauty of whatever language you're listening to, whether it's English or another language, and that the words are inspiring.
Which teachers do you feel had the most impact on you?
That's a good question. Well, my fourth grade teacher was really tough. I was thinking about her today, and I'm not sure why. And she was really tough, but, I learned a lot from her. All of my elementary school teachers left a strong impression and feeling. All of my teachers, I don't think there are that many teachers. Mrs. Michelson and my English teacher in high school, Mr. Rifkin, the chair of the English department, was, by the way, he was someone who truly had a flourish for travel and leading an elegant life. But, I guess in business school, there were a couple of professors who were great. If you can listen to people and walk away with life lessons from the teacher, then, that's a very, very valuable gift. I'll give you three teachers in business school. My Bob Stobaugh was my production and operations management professor. Very boring course. It's how things are made. But he was from Louisiana, had a very heavy accent, and he was an expert in oil and gas. And he said two things. He said, you got to have love. And, he put it in a way that actually I still remember that speech today. And he also said, don't leverage yourself too much, which basically in a language you would understand is just don't leverage yourself too much, is don't borrow a lot of money. And he said, because you get in trouble if it goes the wrong way, which was good business advice. My marketing professor, Hiro Takeuchi, used to make the products that we studied come alive. And my business policy professor, Malcolm Salter, who I miss, he was an expert in the automotive industry. He actually wanted me to go into a doctoral program. And I was now, having spent 6 years at Harvard, 3 degrees, 6 years, I was done. I had taken my last test and I was going to go out and actually earn a living. So I did.
I like your ending. I did.
Well, I like your questions. Right. What else do we want to know?
Why did you want to make movies? What triggered you to go from health policy into movie making?
Well, the way to get out of the Bronx was to be good at science. And I spent 6 years at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. So when I was 14, you're not there yet, but when I was 14 and I got into Bronx Science, which is a high school, and I was in junior high school, they sent me a letter saying, you have to do a directed research project. They said, we've elected you. Actually, it was very nice. They said, you've been picked for a special class to do a directed scientific research project. Now, I misread the letter, and I thought what I had to do was go do that right away. And I said, oh, okay, what am I going to do? So I lived in the Northeast Bronx, and my mother was a ward clerk, which basically was exactly what it sounds like. I mean, she'd walk around the ward at Bronx Municipal Hospital in orthopedics looking at the charts of the patients. She wasn't a doctor, she wasn't a nurse, she was clerical. But she worked down the street from the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, which was a private medical school and a research institution. And I got on the bus and I went to I went down to Albert Einstein College of Medicine, and I went to the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. I walked in. In those days, there's no security. I walked up to the second floor, into the neurology department, found a guy with a beard and a bow tie and a pipe, and when you could still smoke indoors, and which you shouldn't do anywhere. And I looked at Dr. William T. Norton, who turned out to be one of the world's leading experts in multiple sclerosis, which is a neurological disease that affects the fatty sheath, the myelin sheath around your nerves. And I said, can I stay? And I worked there for 6 years. And after 6 years through college of working at a medical school, I realized, despite the fact that my parents wanted nothing more than for me to be a doctor, I was never going to be a doctor. And I wasn't going to be a research scientist. I would pipette noxious liquids. I would sit in front of a gas liquid chromatograph watching brains decompose and get chemically analyzed and things like that. I wasn't going to do this. And furthermore, they would like execute mice for research, and I wouldn't kill anything. I'm a vegetarian today, and that probably was a good indication that I was going to be a vegetarian. And so, you know, when I was in business school, I took a course in personal assessment and career development, which is a nice way of saying figure out what you want to do. And I realized I liked working on projects and I liked watching movies. So that was what I decided. And I thought I'd work in television because I thought there was more work, but I couldn't get a TV job. So I ended up working in the movies.
I personally think movies are more exciting than like normal television.
Well, this is because you're not watching enough of the new TV. Now, TV right now is a lot smarter than a lot of movies. So you go to the movies, what do you see? You see Thor. It's like, oh, I got a big hammer. Boom, Avengers Endgame. Whereas TV, you get Westworld, Handmaid's Tale. You get some of the best writing known to man in TV. Now, movies historically have been a director-actor medium, and it's like create a spectacle and watch it on a large screen. These days, we have large screens at home, and the words matter. And when you're older, you're going to come back to me. I'm going to give you some movies to watch. But let me give you some movies that I highly recommend. Robert Bolt, may he rest in peace, was one of the greatest screenwriters of all time. He wrote Lawrence of Arabia, which is the epic story of the Arab uprising during World War I. He wrote A Man for All Season, the story of Sir Thomas More, who was in the age of Elizabethan England. The words are marvelous. You hang on every word he wrote. Today, you do that with television.
Sure. That actually might the answer. When I said that I might like movies more than TV, I think the only good reason was that Harry Potter's a movie, not a TV series.
If Harry Potter were being made today, it might have gone straight to Netflix.
Probably.
Which is why they made so many Harry Potter movies.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Netflix would look at it and go, wait, I can get 4 years out of this. Let's go do it.
Sure. But they still haven't done it yet.
Well, you know, The Aviator, which is the Howard Hughes story.
Yeah.
We made it as a movie. It was 2.5 hours and longer, actually. And we're going to try to make it as a multi-year series now because we could only capture a subset of his life in the streaming world, we can capture all of his life, or at least enough of his life so that we can tell a more complete story. When you think of The Crown, you think of all of these, the sort of complexity of these stories over time. And you think of a movie like The King's Speech, which I'm not sure if you've seen, but I guarantee you your parents could let you see it. And I would encourage them to let you see it. There's nothing not to see in The King's Speech, which is about King George VI becoming King of England during World War II and his speech impediment. It is a snapshot of his life. The Crown captures Queen Elizabeth's life the whole way through. And she's the longest reigning monarch in history.
Anyway, so next question. Can you tell us how movies are made?
Well, let me give you just a short overview because we're teaching courses over periods of weeks to answer that question. So I would invite you to actually come to film school with me. But let's say there are 3 opportunities to make a movie, okay? And this you should remember because it was very helpful to me. The first opportunity to make a movie is when you write the script. After you write the script, the next opportunity to make the movie is when you shoot it. And then you have footage. And you've turned the script into something visual. The third opportunity to make a movie is when you take all that footage and you edit it. And, you know, when I was an agent, I represented Robert Redford, Robert De Niro, Kevin Costner, Danny DeVito. All of them were actors that became directors. And I watched Robert Redford on a film that you have not seen called The Milagro Beanfield War take the same footage and transform it from a film that was a mediocre film the first time I saw it into a masterpiece 3 weeks later by simply taking the footage and assembling it a different way. He took a story that was originally about a fight about water rights in the state of New Mexico in the southern United States, and he turned it into a fable about how an old man and an angel save a town. They are 2 different movies made from the same footage.
That sounded interesting. Is it something that we should watch when we're older?
You should see that when you're older. And I'll tell you the one you should watch when you're older as well, which was, it took 10 years to get it made. So Robert Redford one day said to me, the first thing I bought for him when I was his agent is I bought a 90-page novella, a short novel called A River Runs Through It, which is a story set against, it's a father who's a minister and his 2 sons. And one of the sons is a good son, and the other son, who is played by Brad Pitt, he has a difficult streak. He is iconoclastic, he gambles, he's stubborn, he's all of those things. And it is the story of how the father and the sons interact in 30s Montana, against the backdrop of fly fishing as a metaphor for life. Fly fishing. Cast it, see if you catch the trout, bring it back in. And fly fishing is an art form. And for some people, it's almost a religious art form. If you come to the U.S., either I'll take you fly fishing or I'll tell you where to go fly fishing. You get your parents to take you to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, maybe one of the most beautiful parts of the United States. Great fishing, great hiking, Yellowstone National Park, as well as the Grand Teton National Park. So that film, nobody wanted to make for 10 years because they thought it was slow. Robert Redford, I had to convince the author, Norman MacLean, because it was semi-autobiographical and it was about his brother who died when he was young and his father. And we convinced Norman MacLean that Robert Redford he had turned down many filmmakers, and we convinced him that Robert Redford would do the right job in turning his precious story into a movie. And Robert Redford went and interviewed Norman on his deathbed. And the movie benefits from the novella. When I read the novella, I couldn't tell what Redford was going to do because the movie that you see and the book that you read are each the highest form of art, but they are different executions of the same story. And the novella, to your point, should you read? Absolutely, because you fill in a lot of the blanks by reading the book. But to make the movie, you needed more information. And they are truly amazing works of art, the book and the movie, but they are different. And to look at the two of them is to appreciate them each for what they are.
Can you tell me what is the most important thing to do when making a movie?
The most important thing to do when you make a movie, I'm not sure there's one most important thing. Probably turn on the camera. But but the real answer to that is get the script right, hire the right actors and right director, and make sure that everyone works as a team. And then you hope that magic happens. And, the movies are a business, but they are really at their core an art form as well. And when the right people get together, they light up a room. They light up a big screen if it's a movie theater. They could light up your living room. And when you see people who you think should be together, it's a magical moment. I'll give you two movies to see, and you should see them, that speak to this. Both of them are not the best scripts. So one is Cocktail, and this is Tom Cruise, Brian Brown, and Elizabeth Shue, and I love Elizabeth Shue, and I worked with Tom Cruise. And it's a story, it's a love story, and it's very visual. They're bartending, there's music, they're crazy, there's dancing, there's this, there's that. But you can't take your eyes off of Tom Cruise and Elizabeth Shue. They look like they should be together. And the movie was a huge hit, despite the fact that it's probably not the smartest words you'll ever read. Then there's a book, then there was a movie, which I think you may know of, and if you haven't, you will, called The Bodyguard. And in The Bodyguard, Kevin Costner becomes Whitney Houston, the singer's bodyguard. And they are magic together. And you know the script. It was directed by my friend Lawrence Kasdan. And we represented Costner and the producer, Jim Wilson. And I remember so it's not the smartest dialogue you'll ever hear. But they are perfect together, and they grow together, and he comes to love her son. And the sense that these two people who probably should never be together get together, and then they can't be together because she's a superstar. It's a beautiful story. And what I would say about it is this. I was at the premiere, and it was a Warner Brothers film. And Warren Lieberfarb at the time was the head of Warner Home Video, which is the largest home video business at the time. You guys probably never seen a video cassette or a DVD, but that was what the business was. He was doing $1 billion in DVD sales. And everybody, and this is Hollywood, so everybody's at the premiere, and premieres are not a great indication of how the movie's going to do because it's an industry audience as opposed to like regular people. And everybody's walking up to Kevin Costner, and they're going, "Oh, this was genius! This was so great! This is unbelievable!" And they would walk away and they go, "This is going to fail. This is just terrible." And they would say, "This is great" to the star, and then they would walk away and they would just say something else to each other. And Warren came over to me, and he said, and we've known each other since the beginning of the business. When I got into the business, he said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think it's a hit." I said, "They're perfect together." I said, the relationship with her and her son, it's magical. And he said, "Yes, it is." He said, "All of these people don't think this film is going to succeed." And it became one of the most successful films, literally of those years, of that decade. It was a humongous success. And it was because they looked right together. So in an optimal world, brilliant story, brilliant casting, brilliant directing, good marketing, you make a hit film. Sometimes a movie is discovered like Blade Runner, decades later. And while the critics appreciated it when it came out, the audience didn't. But that film is remembered, whereas many films that were financially successful are forgotten. And to me, what really inspires me are the films that are remembered.
I'm pretty sure everyone knows what actors do in a movie, but what's the difference between a director and a producer?
Well, there's a big difference between a director and a producer, although sometimes the director is the producer. Directors are there. If you think about an army on the move, the director's the general. And he basically is responsible, and everyone is creatively responsible to the director. He may delegate the authority, but he is ultimately responsible for the creative aspects of the film, all of the creative aspects of the film. And the producer is responsible for all of the business aspects of the film. Now, they may collaborate on both, because actually it is show business. You got to do both. But when you look at the film, the director is, people think he's telling the actor what to do, but he's doing much more than that. He's planning the shots. He's sketching them out. He knows how the day is going to work. He knows what he's looking for. He knows how he's going to compose a scene. He is talking to the lighting cameraman, the cinematographer, to get the light right. He is, eventually he will be choosing the music. He will be collaborating with the composer. He will be on the mixing stage in post-production, and he will be figuring out where, the sound effects should be, where the door opens when the dog barks. I once sat on a sound stage and Michael Mann said, "Let the dog bark later." That kind of stuff. And, he will work with the editor, and the editor and he will shape the pace of the film, of the many takes and the different images that are there, which ones are the ones to use. Should it be close up? Should it be far away? Should it be a two-shot? Should it be a panning shot? And the producer is his partner in that and responsible for the business aspects. And, sometimes the director has more authority. Sometimes the producer has more authority. It depends on the film. It depends on experience. It depends on the budget. It depends on if something's going wrong and if something's going right.
So basically the director's the creative side and the producer's like the business side, but they both collaborate.
That is correct.
Okay. So I read that you were the executive producer of The Aviator. What really...
Actually, I was technically a producer of The Aviator.
Just the producer. What excited you about the project?
Usual case, and I will tell you exactly what happened. So Leonardo DiCaprio, his mother tells him about Howard Hughes. He gets fascinated with Howard Hughes, one of the greatest industrialists in America. He was a pioneer in movies and aviation, and he was one of the craziest billionaires of all time. When there were no billionaires. He was a billionaire when there were no billionaires. And so he goes to Michael Mann, age 20. Michael, who is one of the great writer-directors of all time, they hire John Logan. 10 years later, the script comes in, finally. And Michael gives it to me. I read it that night. I think it's going to, I can't stop reading it. It's so good. I come back. Now, and Michael says, "I don't want to direct it." And he says, what do you think we should do? And I said, well, Jim Carrey's got a Howard Hughes project, and Warren Beatty has a Howard Hughes project. So if we don't make this, they're going to make their movies. We'll never make this movie. Let's go hire another director. So he and I make a list, and we never tell people this. We had 3 directors on the list, and we decided to go to Martin Scorsese, who had just finished working with Leonardo DiCaprio. And then I brought in Graham King. We brought in Graham King, who had worked with Michael on several movies, to finance it. And then, frankly, Graham took over because he had the purse strings. Marty's a Final Cut director, as is Michael, so you can't tell him anything. A Final Cut director, this will advance you above everybody. A Final Cut director means that the director has complete control of the creative elements of the film. Nobody can tell him anything as long as he's on budget, he's shooting the script, and he's within rating and time. And then within that, he can do anything and nobody can say anything. You can get him a jelly donut on the set. I mean, you go to the set and it's like, you got nothing to do. It's like, you go, Marty, how's things going? So, Marty made the movie, and then, each of us played our part in getting the movie made. And the reality is that some movies, the producer has the idea at the very beginning, and he takes it through development, acquisition, development, shooting, post-production, marketing, and release. Sometimes we each play a little piece along the way, because it sometimes takes years to get a movie made, in this case, 10 years. And sometimes everybody has to play a different part because we have a different skill. My skill was knowing the movie needed to be made, working on the budget, helping to hire the director, finding the financing, bringing in the studio, and then letting the talented people do what they do.
You said the director, the final cut director, well, the director basically was what you couldn't tell him what to do, but you were the one who hired him, right?
And sometimes you hire someone who is so talented, and there aren't that many of them, where once you hire them, you turn over all of the controls to that person.
So what is it?
Let me give you a hint. When we hired IMP to design the Creative Artists Agency headquarters building, you could comment on what he was doing, but the reality is you gave him all of the creative decisions. I mean, if you made a decision, it was like to save a little money. But in the case of a Final Cut director, you should be so lucky as to hire someone that talented. And the only reason they get to that position is because they have achieved it over years and years of work and success.
What is the impact of COVID on movie making?
The impact of COVID on movies is exactly why we're on Zoom right now, is that we're figuring out how to get people together safely so that they don't infect each other. And a lot of things are being done digitally that would have been done with live people. Things that would have been shot indoors are now being shot outdoors. There's constant testing. I think that storylines are being changed so that you may not have as many kissing scenes. Things like that. I think we have to adjust in this period to figure out how to make movies. And a lot of times, and what I'm seeing now in Europe, is that people are going to work on a movie, but they're not allowed to go outside of the bubble, of the environment they're in, so that they can't encounter the disease. So you basically taking every precaution that there's little contact that could create a health issue.
Yeah.
Now, it's also keeping people out of movie theaters. On the positive side for television, everybody's watching television. On the negative side for movies, we're not going to the movie theater.
My mum and dad told me that the first movie I ever watched, and by watched I mean stared at a screen and not understanding anything because I was a baby, was the 3D Avatar movie in 2010. But you made a 3D concept film featuring you two even before that in 2008. What do you think is the future of movie making from now?
Well, the future of movie making is good storytelling. And I think that we do want to see things on large screens with other people. I'm not sure 3D really was the answer. I think we have a lot of dimensionality in the high definition screens we see, and people don't like wearing glasses for 3D. U2 3D, which is the band U2, we did the first digital 3D concert film, was brilliant. It was as if you were on stage with the band. It never experienced anything like it. But in general, I think 3D, is less of an attraction than people think it is. And you were too young, so you didn't have glasses. But Avatar's may be one of the most precisely made films, and it's not because it was just 3D. My friend Michael Mann, the director, after he saw Avatar, said that James Cameron, who is the director, raised the bar for 3D, but he also raised the bar for visual effects and for motion capture. And the you know, the world of digital effects and motion capture and all of the things that allow us to imagine what Game of Thrones or Avatar looks like. You can create a world in a computer and make it real. You know, we used to paint glass to create the backdrop. Now we do it in a computer and you can't tell what's real and not real. In The Aviator, Howard Hughes, Leonardo DiCaprio, flies a plane and it crashes in Beverly Hills, which is not far from where I live, and it cuts off the top of people's houses. It's the first time the director, Marty Scorsese, used green screen, exactly what's behind you. And when he was directing, he was saying, I was on set that day, he said, this is strange. He said, you know, he says, I'm directing him, but I don't see what's going on. Normally, I'd have something to tell me what's going on, but I have to imagine what the plane is doing, and so does the star, and that's movie magic. And we're just going to see more of that. But you know, Game of Thrones, you know, those dragons look real. You know, those cities look real. And they're someone's imagination, and they are digitally created.
And in Harry Potter, the Quidditch pitch is completely computer edited.
Harry Potter is very much a computer-generated film.
Yeah. I think most of like the non-realistic, like the magic and mystery and fantasy films have a lot of computer animations because you can't really hire a dragon to feature in a movie.
Not so easy. But but what I'll say is that the brilliance of storytelling is when you forget that it's not real, and you're so immersed in the film that you're living in a world that could never exist, but you're there.
Like Star Wars.
Like Star Wars. All right, what else you got?
What do you think most people don't understand about their movies?
What do most people not understand about their movies?
The movie making like process.
Well, you know, I think people don't, you know, when you actually watch, it's like going to a magic show and having the magician explain how everything works. You know, you see these people and they're in character, and then they go off and eat a donut. So, you know, you're there and you're watching for, you know, whatever the movie is, and you know, pick your, you know, it's like Emma Watson, and all of a sudden she's who she is, and then the next thing you know, she's like Emma Watson, and you go, wait a minute, there's a lot of movie magic that's lost there. You know, so there's that, and sometimes, you know, it's more fun to sort of not know how the tricks are done.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure I really want to know how all magic is done.
Okay, but kind of going back to your first point, I know I'm really obsessed with Harry Potter, but it's sort of like there's one, Lord Voldemort and Bellatrix Lestrange and Dumbledore and Harry are like the complete opposites, but there's one behind the scenes photo where they're like all together smiling and putting their arms around each other, which is completely different to what you see on screen.
Yes, it is. And the characters that people play often have nothing to do with their own personalities.
Yes.
Some people who play evil characters are really very nice people. And some people who play heroes are really kind of, you know, evil people. So you kind of gotta, it's kind of like life, you know, you kind of think that one through.
What do you do to relax or have fun after a really tiring day?
Watch TV.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
And I love to watch brilliant stuff. And you know, sometimes you can just dip in and out of things you've seen before, and it just brings back all the memories of what that movie or that TV series was about. All right, what else you got? I'm going to have to go in a minute. You guys are great. Let me just make sure I'm not. Okay. So tell me what else is going on with you guys.
What do you wish you knew when you were our age?
So much. I wish I knew that you should take your time and not be in a rush with life. Life goes by too fast.
Mm.
Take time, enjoy being with each other, savor the moments. Don't wait for the next thing. Enjoy that, what you're doing at the time you're doing it. It all goes by too fast. I don't regret any of it. The only thing I regret is not having paid more attention in the moment and experiencing it, the depth of love and friendship and everything, that even the bad stuff, it's take your time and don't rush, and truly spend time with people, because that can't be replaced.
Yes. What advice do you have for young people who want to make movies or be part of them in some way?
Well, your parents may not let you, but I have a script Dropbox, and I can give you access to it, and I can give them access to it, and you could read some movie scripts. And what I would do is I'd experiment creatively. I'd start to, look, a lot of this stuff is on the internet, how movies are made, how scenes are created, how characters are built. And what I would do is I would start to think about, and I would think about how real life feels and how real life can be portrayed. And then go online, look at master classes of filmmakers, things that you, even if you think you don't understand them, you'll understand them. You do understand them. You'll just learn more about them later.
Those were very inspirational and adviseful words. Thank you for your time, Sandy. We really, really, really appreciate it.
Well, the only thing that I hope is that we are soon out of this forced hibernation of coronavirus, and that your parents, who I assume love you more than anything on the planet, will drag you to Los Angeles, and then we'll show you some of these movie places.
Yes.
Yes. Just remember, LA, well, you're living in a beautiful place, but LA is a beautiful place too, and you always have an open invitation here.
Thank you.